talking about using and abusing drugs in a major way. So when we talk about ecstasy, it makes people feel really, really crazy sensations. People go to raves and stuff and take ecstasy, and all they do is like rub up on each other, and they're like, oh my god. It's like apparently like this incredibly intense sensation. And like just you touching yourself, which people on ecstasy are just like, oh my god. Because it gives them like this incredible like contact high. And it's because all of your skin sensations are super, super, super sensitive, because dealing with serotonin, ecstasy makes everything super, super sensitive, which makes it fire so much faster. And all of a sudden, you're like feeling everything. And you can like feel the music in my soul. And that's why people take it to go dancing. No one sits on the couch and watches like Netflix, people. Yes.
So if like something were to like hurt you when you're on ecstasy.
Oh my god, you are literally going to be murdered 1,000 times over. It is horrific. Hit it.
This interaction with ecstasy.
Oh yeah, it's like we literally have just died.
The transporter becomes temporarily confused and starts to do its job in reverse.
Okay, so.
The transporter starts transporting serotonin out of the cell.
Okay, so what happens? Ecstasy gets absorbed into the reuptake and goes into our axon terminals, and then starts pushing out all of our serotonin. So all of a sudden, all the serotonin is just kind of like bumping around, being like, oh my god, where's my home? Okay, that is why people who are on ecstasy literally can't sit still.
Wait,
That's
is it
why.
addictive?
It can be, yeah. It's not one of the higher addictive ones. Heroin, meth, and cocaine are going to be 3 most. Heroin by far. But it is addictive because it does hit a little bit onto your dopamine, most sensitive part of your brain. It does release a little bit dopamine. When you have serotonin, it's going to affect your physiological as much as your intellectual. When you have dopamine, it messes up your brain more than it does your physiological, but we can both agree if you mess up the brain, you affect the body. If you affect the body, you're obviously messing up with the brain, yes? When you deal with serotonin, you're really affecting the body. People who take ecstasy literally become incredibly dehydrated because your body is just moving in such a major way. Simone?
Well, didn't the book say that they become super dehydrated and then they end up drinking so much water?
It's a reaction to it. They can. The biggest issue with ecstasy is that it's going to make you want a lot more physical. You're going to feel like you can do a lot more because you're like, oh my god, my body is so strong. Here we go. And they're like down for whatever you can tell them to do whatever they want. Hit it.
The excess serotonin becomes trapped in the synaptic cleft. As a result, it binds again and again to the receptors, overstimulating the cell.
Okay, so when we talk about coming off the high, now, on your hardcore drugs, now ecstasy is a pretty hard drug. It's not one of your hardcore ones. Those are, of course, going to be cocaine, heroin, and meth. Those are your biggest ones. With ecstasy, when you come off of it, your body is kind of like completely lag. Okay? Every single morning, I think we can all agree, we don't jump out of bed with excitement for the day. We're like, ta-da! We move on. We're like, all right, here we go. When you take ecstasy, the effect of it, after you come down from your high, you're kind of like, your whole body is just really worn down. Physically, physiologically inside in your muscles and stuff, and your joints are really, really tight. Your joints are really... So people who like abuse ecstasy and take it on a regular basis actually have really, really worn bodies, and they have a lot of problems later on in life because it uses too much. You also are less sensitive in your skin. Kinesthetically, you pick up less senses and stuff like that. You can't like feel things as much. Your skin essentially becomes dull, and essentially your brain's not processing as much information as possible before, especially with your moving and touching and stuff like that. Athletes do not mess with really ecstasy that much. You're going to have your people who don't depend on hand-eye coordination to deal with ecstasy. Because when you take ecstasy, your whole joints, all of your movements are being worn at such an incredible rate because your body's just like go, 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 go. Your athletes can't, if you play baseball, for instance, it's the fine motor movements which makes you excellent at your thing. You have another drug of choice. Don't worry, we'll get to those drugs. But ecstasy is something you're going to stay away from because it's going to dull out your ability to move as fine-tunedly as you need to. All right, hit it.
Ecstasy affects serotonin pathways responsible for mood, sleep, perception, and appetite. Ecstasy also indirectly interacts with the reward pathway. The excess serotonin stimulates a milder release of dopamine along the reward pathway, giving ecstasy slightly addictive properties.
Okay, so people who take ecstasy like ecstasy, and they're kind of like, oh my god, I wish I had more ecstasy. They're not like straight up addicted like people who take cocaine, heroin especially, and meth. Meth and heroin, like, really, really addicted. Cocaine is like half of addicted of heroin, half like I like the feeling. Does that make sense? People who take ecstasy just like taking ecstasy. They like kind of like the buzz, and they like the feeling like, here we go. But it's not really addictive. Hit it. All right, who are we gonna play with next?
LSD.
You want LSD? Wow, your enthusiasm's off the chart
No,
too.
I like that.
Heroin.
Heroin. Heroin, man. Nice. The last kid I had helping me, she dropped him like 10 times. The poor rat was already messed up because on heroin, but like really messed up.
Before heroin enters the system, inhibitory neurotransmitters are active in the synapse. These neurotransmitters inhibit dopamine from being released.
Okay, who here has ever taken morphine? Okay, I've taken morphine. I was taken into the hospital about 4 years ago, and they gave me morphine. If you go to the hospital and they give you morphine, you've done nothing wrong. Okay, so if who here has had morphine? All right, there we go. How'd you like it?
I didn't like it.
I didn't like it.
Like my mom and I like fucks us about.
I'm terrible. I was literally okay. So I was in incredible pain. So they take me into the hospital. They hook me up to morphine. They give me like a pretty damn good amount of morphine, or at least it felt like a damn good amount of morphine. The moment it hit my blood, I was like, oh my god. I'm like, oh my god, you have a nose. Oh my god. Like super giggly and like all over the place. Literally, like smushing my face. Like, I can't feel it. Okay, so morphine is apparently about 1/1000 of what heroin feels like. Were you high as a kite when you were on your morphine?
Yeah.
Like, oh my god. Like when you watch those videos of people and their parents are like recording them. Okay. Typically, some of them are coming from the dentist, but they don't usually use morphine. But some of them are coming out of like surgery, and surgeries you typically use morphine because it's stronger on that one. So when you come off of morphine, the next day is horrific. Would you agree? I literally wanted to vomit. I did vomit the whole day.
I vomited like 13 times.
Yeah, it is horrific. Okay, the problem with so heroin is dealing with dopamine. The effect of dopamine. It is the highest high you can get. Heroin. Okay. Now it's going to give you sedation and pure joy. The thing that makes heroin different than cocaine, which is also dealing with dopamine, and that is different from, where's my other dopamine? Cocaine, is that when you take heroin, the other ones are like, oh my god, dopamine, 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 dopamine. When you take heroin, it's like your brain is being pumped full of heroin, like open the hose of dopamine, and it's just like pounding your brain with happiness. People who are on heroin are like, oh my god, this is awesome. When you take heroin, you don't get off the couch or wherever you are. You just sit there and go, oh. Oh. And you are just as high as you possibly can, because there is no other high that gets you as high as heroin does the first time you take it. And it is just like someone opened up your brain and pushed in all the dopamine, and all it feels like is just like an explosion of light out of you, and everything is just like so like good. You just can't move because you're like, oh, this is awesome. That's heroin. When you come off of heroin, because if you're the highest high, you're also the lowest of the withdrawals. Can we agree? So unlike other drugs like cocaine, you usually can come off cocaine and you're like, and as you go down, it gets worse. With heroin, as soon as you take the curve beyond like, okay, I'm high, and now I'm not that high and I'm coming down, it starts being painful. because your brain has so much dopamine. The moment the dopamine stops going as hard as it was with the high, all of a sudden now your brain is like freaking out. Like, where is it? Where is it? Where is it? And all of a sudden it's like you have like flames in your veins. It feels like your skin's on fire because your brain is like reacting and it's trying to find. Is that it? Sounds good, thanks. Microphone, student affairs. So what is happening? All of a sudden the heroin is withdrawing and your brain is like reacting in this really terrible way. So the moment you come off the high of heroin, you're in pain. Your whole body. It depends. It depends on how much you take and how big you are when you start doing it and all that stuff. It just depends by person, and that's the issue. So as you take the corner, once you come off the high, immediate pain begins. Okay, with cocaine, it usually takes about halfway before the pain starts of cocaine. Coming out of withdrawals is incredibly painful. But with heroin, it starts immediately and there's no delay. So imagine you feel like your skin is literally on fire. You are in so much pain. Everything hurts. You can't eat, okay? Because every time you eat something, you feel incredibly nauseous and you're just overwhelmed with the amount of pain. What are you going to do? You're going to get more because, A, there's absolutely no pain because you're like, oh. And then when you take it a second time, you're starting from a low place because you're in pain. You get high, so you're out of pain. If you're really high, if you start from a low place, you get high, guess what you're going to fall deeper into? A hole of pain. So that is why heroin is so addictive, is because the pain starts immediately, so people have to take more immediately. When we talk about addicts who are selling their bodies, doing terrible things for drugs, they're heroin addicts. Because when you have that much, like a faucet of heroin being pumped into your brain, and the dopamine just like going everywhere, there is nothing that will make you feel happy again, because with all that dopamine being surged into your brain, nothing natural will make you feel that high again. Taking heroin a second time will never give you that original high because your tolerance is so off the charts. So imagine you are in pain. You are like physically in pain. You're throwing up the whole time because your body is in so much pain. It's literally rejecting everything. You don't feel anything. You don't feel anything good. How would you respond? You respond by either taking more heroin or killing yourself. There is really no one who really stops.
This is how good class is today. Made me forget my phone.
There you go. People do not recover from being heroin addicts. It is very, very rare. If you know someone who used to be a heroin addict who is no longer a heroin addict, that is a very, 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 very rare thing. Heroin is the most powerful drug that people can get. It is the most addictive drug, and people would rather die than deal with the withdrawals. When people get off the drug and say they've been forced to be clean, even when they become clean, a lot of heroin addicts take their life or just can get back on the heroin, because even if you're clean, like say for instance you're forced into detox and the heroin is out of your system, getting a hug from someone, eating something, doing something you actually love, resides no emotional response. Nothing you do after you take heroin for the first time will ever trigger an emotional response from you, especially happiness. Because your tolerance for dopamine is so off the charts, you'll never naturally get it. Now imagine you living in a world where there's pain and there's no real happiness. Or do you want to live in it or no? Exactly. Hence why overdosing is incredibly common, which is why in Massachusetts people are dying everywhere. Every day they're estimating about another 5 to 10 people die of heroin overdoses a day. It's a huge epidemic. Foster homes are literally exploding with kids because their parents are committing suicide. They're overdosing on purpose because they can't live in the world. It's a terrible, terrible thing. Lee.
So when the withdrawals are like that bad, I get that the body needs or wants the dopamine, but why? Why is it that bad? How does it affect everything?
Because it's your brain. Your brain controls everything. If your brain's not functioning perfectly, then everything else is. Have you ever been tired and you literally walk into things, you're like, oh my God, I'm so tired, I need to get to bed? That's just with sleep deprivation, which is incredibly, not normal, but like natural. And that's how your body reacts. Imagine when you include one of the most powerful substances that can manipulate your brain into your brain. Imagine how that changes. Deja.
How is like heroin such an easy drug to get then, like knowing the like effects
Because
that it
people
causes?
who know about it don't mess with it. When you talk about people who take drugs, they don't touch heroin. Heroin is its own category. It's cheap because people don't want it, but people who want it will need it. Does that make sense? Cocaine is a hell of a drug. It really is. And Charlie Murphy said that, and it's really funny that he said that. You don't watch Chappelle Show? No? Okay. Well, it's a classic. When you get older, I guess you will. Okay? It's a hell of a drug because of what it does, and the impacts are less severe than heroin. Heroin is the worst. People stay away from heroin. You have to inject it, so people don't really like that. If you're going to go out with your girlfriends and get a little wild, you're not going to be like, yeah, hit me up. You know what I mean? It is like a hard. I don't know how you ride, girl. But, I don't want to put you in a box, but I don't think you're like, hit me. Let's do it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It is like it is a very small group of people who will do it. It is a very intense group who do it. And because of that, the prices are low. But once I get you. And that's why it's so easily accessible. Not because it's like, oh, wow. It's not like a recreational drug. Marijuana is definitely a recreational drug. Alcohol is the epitome of, like, coffee. Like, come on. We don't even take coffee serious. Like caffeine. Like, God, it's in our vending machine right here. Those are recreational drugs. Heroin is not. That's like your professional druggies, Like, they're like the hardcore. Yes, Sophie.
It's okay. If the withdrawals are so absolutely horrible, how can they function to go and sell their bodies or make money or whatever to get more heroin? How do they do that?
Because they're in so much pain, they will literally get up and do whatever it takes to get some.
But how can people? I mean, you can tell, but I don't know. I just feel like
What?
if they're in that much
Hi, if I was literally cutting your leg off right now and you're feeling that excruciating pain, are you going to do whatever it takes to get the hell away from me?
Mhm.
Yeah.
but
Heroin.
I feel like people to tell more. I don't know.
Tell more?
Like when you see people who are on heroin often.
No, they typically don't really move their house. They really don't. Go up to Massachusetts. Dorchester is pretty much being completely disseminated. It's just being wiped out. Dorchester, Massachusetts. I don't know why. There was a flood of it in from Canada, and people have been selling it really cheap. Yeah, Canada. With the neighbor to the north, man. Yeah, there's a lot of it up in the region. It's in Massachusetts. I know it's in Massachusetts a lot because I happen to have a lot of friends in Massachusetts, so social media, they're constantly posting. Just for my graduating class in Massachusetts, I know at least 10 people who have been killed by overdose of heroin or meth. It's a huge thing. And if I sat next to these kids in class and I'm like, oh my God, what a dork. And here they are getting, people of all different social classes, areas are getting addicted to this stuff. It's really a big deal. And it's really, really scary. All right, hit it.
When the body's natural opiates activate opiate receptors, the release of inhibitory neurotransmitters is shut down. Without inhibition, dopamine can be released.
Hit it.
Heroin mimics natural opiates and binds to opiate receptors, turning off dopamine inhibition. Dopamine is allowed to flood the synapse, producing immediate feelings of sedation and well-being.
There you go, hit it.
Neurons with opiate receptors are in parts of the brain responsible for the transmission of pain signals, stress response, and emotional attachment. Our body's opiates are natural painkillers, effective when we have sustained massive injury. This is why morphine, a drug related to heroin, is used as a painkiller.
Okay, anything that ends in INE typically is an opiate and typically comes from the same plant that heroin and morphine and all that stuff come from. Have you ever taken codeine, something of codeine, hydrocodone? Yeah? Those that kind of gives you this weird hangover kind of thing the next day. You feel super fuzzy. Yes? No? Okay, that would be the opiates. Okay? They take away pain and they're highly effective, which makes them highly addictive. Okay, so the most popular of your major drugs is heroin. The problem is lately a lot of people are getting addicted to codeines and all the other opiates because obviously the idea of putting a needle in your arm and injecting heroin and going to the corner where you have to buy the heroin and saying, get me. You know, I mean, that's really strange. But you can go into your, you know, anybody's medicine cabinet to a degree and you can pull out drugs. And people are dying because of addiction to opiates. And that's because they're using pills in order to get not as high as heroin, but pretty high. Hit it. All right, who we want to see next? We don't say that.
Meth.
We-
The marijuana.
No, meth.
You want meth or marijuana?
We want meth.
All right, meth it is.
I think he's gray.
He's the white one in the middle.
Yeah,
There.
That's gray. He's gray. Yeah, he's gray. That's gray. That's gray. His eyes are. That's gray. So gray.
Dopamine transporters are responsible for removing dopamine from the synaptic
What part of
cleft.
the brain is that?
Because meth mimics dopamine, it is taken into the cell by the dopamine transporters.
Okay, so we're in meth, which is an amphetamine. Now, the most common amphetamine is going to be meth. Also, Ritalin. So, if you take Ritalin, it's in the meth family, and that's why people get highly addicted to it. People say, oh, I just like the way it makes me really focus. No, you're addicted to it. It has it's addictive properties to it. No, I just want to really focus. No, you're addicted to it. Don't believe it. So, amphetamines, it affects dopamine, it mimics it, it makes you happy, giggly, and paranoid. Now, where is it? There's different receptors in different parts of your brain, and all of them have different responses because they're supposed to be picking up different stuff in different areas. So they're all over. Hit it.
Once inside the cell, meth enters the dopamine vesicles, forcing the dopamine molecules out.
Okay, so dopamine is the same one that is used in heroin. When heroin affects dopamine, it's like all of you dopamine out. So it's like this surge, which is why people are like, ah. It's like they have like a waterfall of like dopamine like hitting them in the face. They can't literally do anything. When you're on meth, it is. Okay? It is like constant attachment. It's like they bind and it's just like constant like, yeah. Like, yeah. Feel that bind. Yeah. Feel it. Can you imagine what that sounds like in the other room? Okay? So when you have dopamine and you have meth, it is like this constant like wave of happiness is coming. You know how like when you're lying like in water and stuff and there's waves and you're like, oh my God, could it be better? And you're like, oh my God, so relaxed. That's what meth is. It is literally like waves of happiness. Like, ooh, 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 good one. Ooh. And they literally sit around and all they do is giggle. And they're like, ooh. And like it's just like this major sensations of just like waves of happiness that are continuously happening. So people who are taking it just feel happiness. Now, meth is your second most addictive drug. So, as soon as you come off meth, off your high, okay, your brain is like, oh my God, dopamine, oh my God, dopamine. You start having these really sharp pains. People who take meth say that their skin, underneath their skin, it feels like there's like wood. That they just literally just don't feel like themselves. And they feel like ants are underneath their skin.
I thought it was crap. I mean,
No, cocaine is a little bit different. Cocaine is like they're checking to make sure they're still there. Like they're pulling up. With meth, they literally feel like there's kind of like ants underneath their skin. So they're literally pulling back their skin. Because it's like this weird sensation. It doesn't hurt. It doesn't hurt. It just feels. You know how like when you have like a weird like pain kind of like in some part of your body and you're just like, you just keep hitting it and you're like, what the hell is that? It's like that but in a major way. And like they just kind of like pull back their flesh. A lot of meth, people who are addicted to meth literally have scars all over their body where they've literally tried ripping their skin open. And that's a huge problem and they literally start festering. Now people who take meth are super, super skinny because apparently the meth, and I have no idea how or why, it transforms your mouth. Everything tastes really, really bitter, metallic, or acidy. So people who are on meth can't drink anything. And their body is burning so much of the water content in their body. And every time they drink something, they literally scream. It tastes like it's burning them all the way down. So they won't drink anything. Anytime they put anything in their mouth, it makes them physically nauseous. They immediately spew it up because it feels like super metallic-y and super chemically, and they reject it immediately. So people who are on meth literally are just pulling out their flesh and are literally becoming incredibly dehydrated and starved. And it's like there's nothing they can do. Imagine if everything about you is incredible. Imagine how hungry you get when you're really hungry and that terrible pain you have because you're hungry, okay? And you're so thirsty. Imagine that feeling and not being able to eat or drink. Would you want to live, really? No, absolutely not. However, taking meth takes away that pain. It doesn't let you drink water, but it takes away that pain, that nauseous, that gut-wrenching pain that you have from not being able to hydrate and do all that type of stuff. And it stops you from pulling out your skin. And as soon as you come from that high, that's exactly what comes back. Ugh. So does it make sense why people who take meth continue taking meth? Because it gets away that hunger, it gets away that thirst, it gets away all that pain of underneath your skin. Yes.
Does that happen from just one time taking it?
Yes. Heroin and meth. You don't casually take heroin or meth. You're not like, oh my God, it's a Tuesday. I need a little bump in my step. I'm going to take some meth tonight. No. Meth is one of those things. You're like, yeah, I'm really not happy with my life. I don't care if I live and die. Let's try some meth. It is what? Those are people who do it. People who are genuinely happy in their life are not like, yeah, let's go get some meth tonight. That's not really happening. People who are unhappy with their life are seeking the hardcore drugs, heroin, and meth. Cocaine is different. Cocaine is different, and we'll talk about it. I'm going to be honest with you and tell you what the effects really are and why people like it. But I'm also going to tell you the really scary part that most people don't teach you about how much pain you're in and all that stuff. I think that part, I don't understand why people don't teach it that way, right? Doesn't that make sense? Oh my God, I don't want to be ripping my skin off. Ew, that's so disgusting. If you ever get bored and you want to see how meth affects people, Google people who take meth, and you will see the scariest things. Before and after pictures are insane. And their teeth, it's because they literally just don't care about anything else. And the smoking, it's from the smoking. It literally just breaks up all your bones and stuff like that. Your bones become incredible. It's horrific. All right, hit it. By the way, I really appreciate that microphone.
In the cell causes the transporters to start working in reverse, actively pumping dopamine out of the cell and into the synapse.
Next.
The excess dopamine becomes trapped in the synaptic cleft. As a result, it binds again and again to the receptors, overstimulating the cell.
Next.
Meth is highly addictive because it works directly on the brain's reward pathway, making the user feel intense pleasure and exhilaration.
Next. Okay, so meth is really in a sweet spot of where it makes things feel good right there. All right, what do we want to see next?
Cocaine.
What? Don't use slang.
Dopamine transporters are responsible for removing dopamine molecules from the synaptic cleft after they have done their job.
Next. There you go.
Cocaine blocks these transporters, leaving dopamine trapped in the synaptic cleft. As a result, dopamine binds again and again to the receptors, overstimulating the cell.
Okay, heroin pushes all of the dopamine into the synapse and says, go! And that's why you're like, ah. Okay, when you take heroin, okay, dopamine is literally on the receptor and it's just like, yes. No, not heroin. When you take meth, it's like, yeah. Cocaine. I know we're on cocaine. When you have cocaine, it is bouncing around the synapse and there's nowhere to go. So if you've ever seen someone who is on cocaine, they're literally twitching because every time the dopamine hits, they respond and they twitch, which is what is totally different from heroin. Heroin is just this strong, sudden burst. It's a continuous pushing of dopamine, cocaine literally twitch. And you're just like, hey, huh? Okay, people love cocaine. People love cocaine for two major reasons. A, it makes you really skinny. Okay? Your celebrities, when they're abusing drugs, they're abusing cocaine typically, whether they tell you that or not. Your beautiful people are not using meth and heroin. They're not. Beautiful people abuse cocaine for two major reasons. A, it keeps you really thin. Okay, because you're burning off so many calories, because your heartbeat is just out of control, you're sweating a lot, you burn a ton of calories. The other reason why people really like cocaine is because right now, someone, I don't know where I read it, but someone said that when you're not on cocaine, like normal people, we see the world like this, okay? That everything when we look through, we see what we're looking at, but you don't see much more. When you're on cocaine, it's like all of a sudden your brain is firing so much because it's constantly stimulated by the dopamine. You feel great and you feel like you're seeing everything at the same time. So not only are you seeing what you're looking at, you're experiencing everything at the same time. So your world is like super, super intense and like you're like seeing everything. People take cocaine to go out. People take cocaine to go to concerts because you're like, you can see like the music. Whatever that means, like you can see it. It gives you a ton of energy, and it just makes you feel like that you can be like you're completely immersed in something that you're not experiencing. You're like participating in a big way. So it's not like you're just left out. So you take cocaine, and this is a recreational drug. It's addictive, but it's not the other two. Okay? When you take cocaine, when you come off of it, your body is completely worn down. It is completely worn down. Keith Richards from the Rolling Stones loved cocaine. That man is only like 81 who looks 300. Anyone who takes cocaine, they age super, super quickly once they officially finish cocaine. If you know someone who took cocaine when they were younger, like you're typically really worn older people who are like in their 50s and their 60s, and you're just like, oh my God, like they look awful. They probably took cocaine. It is. Now the biggest, no, really, honestly, I mean, some people just have like, you know, age faster and stuff like that. But like if you see someone like celebrities and stuff who just look like, oh my God, they look terrible. Okay, it's typically because of the cocaine. When you take cocaine, the scariest thing about cocaine is when you do heroin, you can overdose while you're high. Like you puke and then you drown in your own vomit. Typically, that's how people overdose. Okay, Breaking Bad, that's the heroin. All right, when you take drugs like meth, when people overdose, they're typically vomiting in their mouth. People don't overdose on cocaine. You have a heart attack and you die. You don't drown in your own vomit like a lot of the other drugs. Your heart literally bursts or you have a stroke. Like it strains your body so much. When you come off of cocaine with your withdrawal, so you go all the way up, you literally crash and it takes you days or weeks to recover depending on how much you use it. So when people who are addicted to cocaine decide to clean up, they literally have to go to rehab. Rehab is mostly people on cocaine because the longer you take cocaine, the more depleted your resources are. Now, when you do use and abuse cocaine, what happens is your heart becomes incredibly weak, your lungs become incredibly weak, and your muscles, because your heartbeat is overworked and you're predisposed to have an early heart attack and stuff like that. The more you take cocaine, the more likely you are. However, first-time users typically die on cocaine more than any other drug. Because apparently what it's like is like you take cocaine, like you snort it typically. You snort the cocaine, it goes straight to your brain. And then all of a sudden your heart, it's like someone took the electric pads and literally jump-started your heart. And all of a sudden you're like, ah, here I am, like, and go. And a lot of people have a heart attack and die. Literally from the first time they take cocaine. And that's the thing. So the reason why celebrities and stuff like it is because you do lose a ton of weight, okay? It is like excited. You're like, yeah, let's go. You do have that twitch. However, it is a long-term cost. Typically when you see like celebrities and stuff that look really rough, it's because of their cocaine abuse. And it just completely wears down your entire body. You can never get that back. Like, no matter how much exercise, all that stuff, when you take cocaine, you literally take, they estimate, like 7-8 years off your life immediately.
Isn't that what they take like on the Wolf of Wall Street? Whoever watched that?
Yeah, that's what he does. He does Quaaludes too, which is a sedative. So, all right, so that's cocaine. Hit it.
Like other drugs, cocaine concentrates in the reward pathway. However, it is also active in the part of the brain controlling voluntary movements. This is why cocaine abusers are fidgety and unable to be still.
Okay, when we talk about cocaine, when people come off cocaine, their body crashes. Okay, that they can't function. Now, most of the people who take cocaine aren't drug addicts. Cocaine's really expensive because people really like it, and it has such kind of cool side effects. It makes you feel like you're seeing everything for the first time, and it's the most desirable of all the drugs out there. Okay, because of that, the price is really, really high. And the problem is when you come off of your high of cocaine, your body's resources are completely depleted, which means you need to just sleep for like 4 or 5 days. Well, can most of us take 4 or 5 days off our life to get over one high? No, so what do? You take a little bit more, and that is how this addictive process, so when people are like, oh, I just need a little bit more, it's not because they're like, oh my God, addicted like heroin, like I cannot live without it. It's because I cannot be completely depleted. By taking more cocaine, I can essentially complete what I need to do. And so after time and time again of doing that, when you do stop taking it, what happens? You're literally like lying in a rehab facility for like 3 months. Just like, oh my God. And it fries your brain. Cocaine fries your brain. You're not able to think as fast, and kind of, it numbs your brain, so you don't produce as many neurotransmitters, especially dopamine and stuff like that. But the problem is that it slows people's ability to speak and function, because it just essentially like cooks your brain, just because of how active it is. Isn't that crazy? I hope you enjoyed it.